spoken novel, do you actually read it aloud to yourself?
Sometimes, but you know, I don't think I have to. I hear perfectly well. I mean, it's all about sound to me. I shouldn't say all, but that's fundamental. But I don't think I have to read it out loud to hear it. But it's, I mean, it is helpful at some point to read things out loud. And just reading to you tonight, I can see there's a word here or there that I should have changed. Why didn't I read that out loud to myself? But mostly I think that I just as some composers don't have to be playing the piano to hear their music, I do think I experience sound without having to read it out loud. Yeah.
How do you know when you're done? Because you just said right now you had a time deadline, and that sort of.
You know, I don't think this novel is really done, and I don't. It's close. It's close, but I have never worked like this. I mean, to me, it's comical now because it wasn't the catastrophe that I was expecting. But I was literally writing a scene the night before this went into Bound Galleys. I had to give the last lines to McPherson over the telephone at 10 to 12 because it had to go to the printer at 12 o'clock. I have never done that before. And there are some, usually I'm a great perfectionist about things like perfectly consistent spellings, perfectly consistent hyphenation, perfectly consistent dialect choices. This book has inconsistencies. But I also decided that it was high time that I got a little more tolerant of that kind of, well, I really mean this. You know, I felt that if it was ever going to happen in a book, this was the right book for it, where so much is inner voices, which are raggedy after all. You know, none of us think in such perfect sentences, and it just somehow fit with that ragtag racetrack and those ragtag horses and horse people trying to guess what will make a horse win. It's always a guess. It's a guess at the Kentucky Derby. So how much more so at racetracks where the most expensive horse is worth $6,000, you know? So it just seemed right. But nevertheless, I know that if I have a chance, I'll fix a few things. What's more, I felt that I was getting away with murder because it's been so many years since I've been on the racetrack, and I was sure I must have some matters of fact wrong. And the review that most pleased me of all the ones that have appeared, not that there have been so many yet, but there have been some nice ones, was a column by Andrew Beyer, the horse racing columnist for the Washington Post, whose shrine I worship at. I mean, you know, he invented a thing called the Beyer speed factor, which is a way of interpreting comparative figures for speed, no matter what kinds of races and works horses are running in. So he's a brilliant guy, and he knows everything about horse racing. And he only corrected me on two things. And he was a gentleman enough to do it in private. He didn't even put it into his column, which. But it was thrilling to me that somebody from horse racing, rather than the literary world, got interested enough in this book to pay some attention to it and say good things about it. Yeah. Well, since they take me so long to write, I better really want to write that book, you know? It has to be something that's just huge in my day-to-day ruminations. That experience on the racetrack, although it only lasted for 3.5 years or so, made a huge impression on me, and I loved it, even though I knew I couldn't possibly stay there. I wasn't cut out for that life in a number of ways. An orthopedist even said to me, "You are not cut out for carrying 80-pound buckets every day. And you won't last long if you do this all the time." But after I finished that life, I went to graduate school. But it was very, very, it's just remained very present in my mind. And I'm very involved with animals all the time anyway, one kind of animal or another. So that book just had to be written. Now I'm working on a novel about being married to a German. That's very, very big in my rumination. That's got to be written, you know. If that's the next book, I don't know how long it will take. Or, pardon me? What did you say?
I can hardly wait.
Well, might have to wait a while, but I hope it won't be 10 years. Yeah. Yeah.
In the back, you expressed gratitude. I wonder if you want to explain anything about pockets and the bunch.
Oh, Pockets. I wish that, I had his last name, and I know it's in my notebook somewhere. I really needed to go back and talk to some old-timey grooms, like the ones that I had worked with in the late 60s. I just needed to be reminded of choices of phrase and general shape of a life, and there were questions that I'd never asked the guys that I had known that I thought I would want to ask somebody else. Richard Small, who was also thanked in the back of the book, is actually a very famous horse trainer, a horse trainer at Pimlico, who is very much a horseman's horseman. I mean, he's not the swankiest, but he's highly respected. And a friend of my father's put me in touch with him. He knew exactly what I meant when I told him what kinds of grooms I wanted to talk to, and he sent me to two people, Bubbles Riley, who is one of the dedicatees of the book, and Pockets. And I wish, I have to say that I stole more from Pockets than I did. Bubbles informed me about millions and millions of things that I needed to know. Literally, every day I would call him up and say, "What color is the thing that you wear in the winter circle? I can't remember. Is that something you actually wear? Could you describe that to me again? Because I forget if I ever knew." Things like that. But Pockets was the one who said, let me think if I read anything to you tonight that was actually straight out of Pockets. I can't remember, but I'm sure there was. For example, Medicine Ed says at a certain point that he had an ulcer from working on a horse named Platonic. That was so instructive to me. And Pockets told me that story about, he had worked on a famous racehorse called Osei. And bringing a horse up to a stakes race, it had just never occurred to me. It's as stressful for the groom, who has more day-to-day contact with that horse than anybody else, as it is for the ones who really get the big money from it. He has thousands of times more opportunities to make a mistake that would really hurt. Yes, it was straight from Pockets that I got the term "the butcher shop" for Sinai Hospital in Baltimore. He used to just call it the butcher shop, and I realized I can't. I'm going to have to explain that that's Sinai Hospital, but Yeah, and I feel kind of rotten that I didn't find his name, but he's probably not alive. That was, when I talked to him, that was quite a while ago. Also, come to think of it, he had that limp that Medicine Ed has. That is, he'd been run over, meaning a horse had stepped on, had sort of run into him and over him at a certain point. And so he had to do that thing that Medicine Ed is described as doing, lying on his hip with his legs sticking straight out when he worked on a horse's feet. A very vulnerable position, and not the easiest way to get leverage. But, you know, I saw this, and when I talked to Pockets, he was already well into his 60s. Handsome, lean, but a bitter kind of guy. And, I mean, bitter for the reasons that Medicine Ed is bitter. So.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
This is for you over here.
Great, okay. Let me get my own pen, okay?